Hello, I'm Mark Price. I'd like to talk to you today about boldness. Boldness. By the way, a lot of people are not aware, but the Bible actually does mention one automobile. It says that the apostles came together, argued, debated about many things, but they left in one accord. Get it? Yes. In fact, in today's first reading, it says that they prayed in one accord. So there you go. The readings today are from the Acts of the Apostles 4:23 through 31, and the Gospel of John is chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. I'm not going to read them today because I'm going to reference both of them, and they would be quite long for this short reflection of mine. But I want to focus on boldness, because boldness and being bold has been something that's been referenced in many of the readings that we have had since Easter time. And it's again mentioned today. It says that the apostles in boldness stepped out. So I want to talk about boldness today and how we can adapt boldness in our own lives. Boldness in our faith, boldness in our dealing with problems that hit us, like, for example, a coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. So what is the importance of boldness? Well, in the gospel reading, we hear of the story of Nicodemus. And Nicodemus goes to Jesus. Nicodemus is a Pharisee. He goes to Jesus, it says, at night, which maybe shows a bit of timidity, bit timid, but after all, he is a Pharisee, and there was sort of an understanding that Jesus was verboten. We're not to go to Jesus, we're to stay away from Jesus. And remember, St. Paul was also a Pharisee, and he persecuted the church of Jesus, the followers of Jesus. So here Nicodemus goes to Jesus and says, how do I get to heaven? And Jesus says, you do not attain heaven unless you are born again. And this confuses Nicodemus, and he says, wait a minute, I have to go back into my mother's womb? And Jesus says, no, born of the Spirit from above. We're born of the Spirit. And then that confuses Nicodemus. What's the Spirit? And Jesus says, well, it's kind of like the wind. You don't know where it comes from, you don't know where it's going, but it's always there. And we need to be people, if we are people of faith, we need to be people who embrace and are open to the Spirit. We need to be bold in our actions to accept the Spirit, and then when the Spirit is on us, be like the leaf in the breeze. Be docile with the Spirit. Let the Spirit take us where the Spirit wants us to go. In the first reading from Acts, Peter and John, after being chastised by the leaders of the temple, go back to their upper room and meet with the others and tell them what had happened. And they decide that they are going to ignore the threats made by the chief priests and the church leaders, and they're going to proclaim the gospel of Jesus to anyone. And it says that they prayed in one accord. So what are we called to do? We're called to be bold in thought, in word, and in deed, and we're called to be open to the Spirit, and we're called to follow where the Spirit leads us. So how are we bold? We're bold in our thought, which means we have to keep our mind open, be fearless to what God is trying to say to us on a daily basis. In words, we're bold in our word. That doesn't mean rude or obnoxious or hard. That means we're bold. We're not afraid to speak out. I remember when I was young, as a Catholic, when we would go to a restaurant, for example, we'd say grace and we'd make the sign of the cross. You don't see people doing that anymore. We're not bold in our actions. We're not bold in our words. We're not bold as people who are proud of our faith. We seem to be a little bit ashamed or timid in how we live out our faith. And the readings today are telling us that we are to be bold in approaching our faith and allow the Spirit to give us the strength that we need and go along with the Spirit. So how do we sustain this boldness? Through prayer. Daily prayer. Pray by ourselves to God, family with God, get online with God. How can we be bold, and how can we allow the Spirit to take us where the Spirit wants to take us. How do we trust? We trust by building the relationship with God that comes through prayer. G.K. Trust Chesterton, one of my favorite authors, said it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting or lacking, but rather it's been found difficult and not really tried. This is Mark Price. Thanks for listening.